The Kingdom of Hornist, second floor of the Hexagon Tower. The second floor of the Hexagon Tower consisted of two rooms. One where the 11 assassins, Nihil and his 10 sons, resided, and the other one that was used for a bunch of different things. In this case, it was used to keep a certain ant trapped within a cellular-shaped prison.
I'll ask you one more time. Where are the ants with Ozara's feather blades?
Harlow, the wasp guard, asked Ten, who was entrapped on the wall of one of the countless hexagon cells. Ten did not say a word.
Still refusing to talk, huh?
Harlow was pissed off.
Well, whatever. Wendell went to get Lord himself. You're pretty lucky he ordered us not to hurt you. But when he arrives, let's just say that it will be in your best interest to talk.
What is going on? Ten thought to himself.
Just what the hell did Antonio get himself into? Why do these wasps want their blades so much? I mean, I know they're valuable and all that, but to go to this extent, it just doesn't make sense.
Ten's mind went numb as he saw the bug that had just entered the room.
Lord!
Harlow bowed before Lord Caesar.
You're... There's no way.
Ten started shaking as he recognized the hero he admired as a child. The hero that him and his best friend Antonio always dreamed of meeting one day, at least before the kingdom started falling apart.
Hello.
Caesar smiled when he saw how surprised Ten was.
You're Caesar, the Cunning, one of the great knights. So Antonio was right. He was right all along. You are still alive.
Ten seemed to forget that he was imprisoned inside the most hostile part of Castania. He was too excited to see one of his idols. He was too excited that Antonio turned out to be correct.
I can't believe it. You're alive. The great knights are alive. Castania is saved. This is big news. But why did you hide? Why let everyone lose hope? Why let the citizens go into despair?
Ten's mind was filled with questions that would mostly stay unanswered. Caesar raised his top left leg, signaling that Ten needed to stop talking.
I am the one who asks questions, Ten, not you. Do you understand?
He coldly said, ignoring everything Ten asked him.
I understand.
Ten felt something weird as soon as he heard Caesar's voice. He felt fear.
Fear? But why?
Caesar was a great knight, wasn't he? The protector of the Castanean kingdom, the savior of all Castanean citizens. So why did Ten feel intimidated?
What's going on?
I have a few questions for you, Ten. But before I ask them, I have to correct you about something. The great knights are dead, Caesar calmly said. Then he grinned as he saw the shock on the face of the young ant.
Dead? That can't be right, can it? If they're dead, then why is Caesar alive?
Ten was confused, shocked and scared, and those emotions only grew as Caesar said the following sentence. And not only that, but the Master King is also dead. Ten couldn't bear this news. His breathing became heavy.
Something is terribly wrong with all of this,
the young ant thought. He wanted to be left alone to process this terrible news, but Caesar gave him no such luxury. It had been reported to me that 2 ants were seen carrying around Ozara's feather blades. That is why I sent the 11 assassins to scout the battlefield city in hopes of finding them. But instead they found you, a lone ant wandering around with pretty much nothing except a little trowel. But you know those ants, don't you? So tell me everything you know and I might spare your life. Caesar told Ten, and the young ant feared. He felt fear that he didn't even know was possible to feel.
Even the Grand Menace didn't seem this scary to him. But why? Why was one of the great knights doing this? I I do not I don't know. I know them. I know the twins. Antonio and Nathan. Our Queen Elderanta sent them to find you, to find the great knights. She gave them those blades for their journey. They were sent to find out the truth about where you've been all this time, for the past 10 seasons. And I escaped Anthill. I promised to someone that I would bring Antonio back. I arrived in Battlefield when I was kidnapped by those assassins. Then slowly let out, in between the heavy breaths he was taking. There you go. Caesar was happy to get the informations out of 10 so quickly. Do you see, Harlow? He can speak. Yes, my lord. Harlow was nervous. Harlow, go and call Vasporio. It turns out his observation was correct. I promised I'll reward him if that turned out to be the case. Caesar ordered, and Harlow the guard was quick to listen. After a few moments of silence, Ten finally got the courage to attempt asking Caesar something. Why? Why do you want their blades? Caesar turned towards Ten. He was observing him for a few seconds before answering. Oh, young ant, there is so much you do not know. So much that the common citizens of Castana do not know. I suppose it changes nothing if I tell you. You see, this kingdom is utterly broken from its core. It's been that way for a very, very long time. And the core of it all, the Master King. The old Master King, that is. So I got rid of him. And I will replace him. I will fix Castana. And to do that, I first needed to find a solution to the biggest problem Castana was facing. The Grand Menace. More precisely, how does Castana get rid of him without relying on the great knights? And I came up with a solution. I made an army of wasps, a loyal army that I personally trained for the past couple of seasons, an army that will, once Ozara appears, take him down with ease. But an army can't go into a battle unarmed. I needed weapons, lots of them, and not just any weapons, but the only weapons that would be effective against the beast. I needed Ozara's feather weapons. So I sent out spies all around Castana. They would both keep an eye on the things outside Hornes, but also, if any of them would notice the sight of an Ozara's feather weapon, they would report back to me. And I would try everything I could to get my hands on those weapons. Buying them, secretly stealing them, or taking them away by force. Though that third method was rarely used. After all, I didn't want the rest of Castana to know of my plans. By doing this, I have successfully collected over 20 blades, spears, and even a pair of scissors and a trident. But hearing about not one but 2 Ozara feather blades being spotted, and in hands of ants, the only part of Castana where I was unsuccessful in placing my spies was none other than Anthill, because it closed its doors a long time ago. So needless to say, I was intrigued when I heard those news from Vasporio, and I had to check if it was true. And now, thanks to you, Ten, I know everything about the weird occurrence. Well, now that my curiosity is satisfied, I have no more use for you, Ten. Caesar finished telling his plans to the powerless ant, and just as he was about to sting Ten, someone entered the room. Lord Caesar! A wasp, trembling in fear, rushed inside. This startled Caesar, who turned around to see what was happening. This greatly relieved Ten, but the relief would not last long. What? Caesar was frustrated. An old cripple. He's carrying around this large sword, and he's threatening to cut the branch that the hornet is hanging from, unless you come out to meet with him, the guard explained, and Caesar's eyes widened. An old cripple, you say?
Caesar looked excited. In that moment, Harlow and Vasporio entered the room.
Lord, you have called for me, great Vasporio,
Vasporio said.
Yes, wait here, I have to do something real quick.
Caesar started heading out. Just before he exited the room, he added,
Oh, Harlow, knock that ant unconscious. I'll decide what to do with him once I deal with this.
Harlow nodded, and Caesar left. The last thing Ten thought before being knocked unconscious was, I hope you're okay, Antonio. The kingdom of Hornest was the only kingdom that was hanging from a tree, near the very top of it, on a thick branch. On that very same branch stood an old dung beetle with a shattered soul.
Caesar! Come face me, Caesar!
The crippled knight yelled as loudly as he could. One of the guards that was circling around the giant nest heard him and went to check what was going on.
Who?
The guard was stunned by the crippled knight's appearance. An old dung beetle, missing 2 legs and its right eye, carrying behind him the biggest sword that anyone has ever seen.
You! Do you know where Caesar the Cunning is?
Dan was impatient. The guard was even more surprised to hear this.
How does he know about Caesar? I thought nobody knew he was alive. I should probably act like I don't know what he's talking about.
The guard thought to himself before lying to Dan.
I do not know where this Caesar you seek resides.
Dan immediately knew that the guard was lying to him, so he raised the crow cutter. This really shaken the guard, who felt threatened. But what scared him even more were the next words that left Dan's mouth.
If you don't tell him to come face me, I will cut this branch off. I will kill everybody in Hornest unless I see Caesar.
I understand, Mr. Cripple. I'll get him right away. The guard quickly left, and just a minute or so later, the wasp and the dung beetle met face to face for the first time in 10 seasons.
I knew you were alive then, Caesar said as he landed on the branch in front of Dan. I just hoped that I wouldn't have to see your face again before my plans were complete.
Caesar sounded upset, but deep inside, he was excited to see Dan again.
Caesar!
Dan said his name with pain and hatred in his voice.
You know why I'm here, Caesar. You'll finally pay for everything you've done, everyone you've killed.
Dan. A few uncomfortable moments of silence followed, as neither of the 2 warriors moved nor spoke, until Caesar continued.
It's not too late for you to turn around, Dan.
His voice was slightly shaking, just barely enough to be noticeable.
What?
Dan couldn't believe what he heard.
Not too late, Caesar? If anything, it was too late a long time ago. I should have come to face you many seasons ago. Then, I should have done this a long time ago, Caesar. But alas, we cannot change the past now, can we? Besides, past isn't what matters anymore. What matters is that I will finally avenge them, Caesar. I will finally avenge everyone you've killed. Well, maybe not everyone.
Dan's words slowed down for a moment.
Maybe you were right about Dabir, I admit. Maybe he had to be gone. Maybe there really was no other way. But that didn't mean you had to kill poor Diablo. He was innocent.
Dan was holding back tears as the memories of his beloved friend started rushing through his head once again.
Innocent?
Caesar seemed shocked that Dan dared use that word.
Don't you dare speak of innocence, Dan. I was told you threatened to kill everyone in Hornest if I hadn't come to face you. You wasps are all the same to me. I should have realized that a long time ago.
Dan's powerful voice, filled with rage and despair, echoed throughout the air.
Besides, Diablo wasn't innocent then. He was a threat to my plan.
Had he warned Dabir about my plans to assassinate him, Dabir would do everything he could to kill all of us. And the generation of knights after us, and the generation after that, and after that, and the whole cycle would never end. Caesar tried to make Dan understand his view on the world, but this understandably made Dan even more upset.
A threat? Diablo? He was the purest one of us all. And so what if the beer got rid of us at the end? If that's what was meant to be, so be it. It's the way things had been for over 100 seasons, and it's clearly worked, hasn't it? The beer's way may have been wrong to us, the knights, but it was clearly right to the citizens of Castania. But you, Caesar, you became so blinded with your own way of just and righteous that you had started killing off even those closest to you. But I'm here to put an end to it all. I'm here to put an end to you. Dan gripped the crow cutter tightly, preparing to strike. I did it all for the sake of Castania, Dan. For the sake of the greater good. Above me, above you, above Diablo, Caesar yelled. Greater good? What greater good do you speak of, Caesar? Do you know how many innocents you've killed indirectly by your actions? Do you know how many citizens killed themselves because they had lost all hope after we disappeared, after you made us disappear? Do you know how many starved because Anthill closed its doors? And do you know why it closed its doors then? Because the great knights disappeared. And why did they disappear? Because you killed Diablo. Because you made Weaponeta's sacrifice meaningless. You didn't do this for no greater good. You're the one who put Castana in this desperate state in the first place. Dan slowly raised the giant sword. As the enraged words left his mouth, and a lone tear dropped from his left eye. No, Caesar's head started hurting. Was Dan right? No, he couldn't possibly be right. Everything Caesar did was for the sake of Castania, right? The few lives that were lost were a necessary sacrifice needed to fix this kingdom, right? And sure, there was bound to be those who ended their own lives when the knights didn't appear in public anymore, but the number couldn't possibly be that high, could it? No, I'm overthinking this. And even if all that Dan says is true, it's all in the past. It doesn't matter anymore. Yes, once they see what I was aiming for, I will be remembered as a hero. The hero who fixed Castania. Caesar was desperately trying to convince himself that he was right. That he did the right thing, because it would be too difficult and too late to admit that he was wrong. Caesar slowly started flying upwards, still facing Dan. I wish this could have ended differently, Dan, he said. After hesitating for a few moments, the wasp started flying towards Dan, aiming his deadly sting at the dung beetle, but Dan was already ready to swing his sword. The crow cutter hit the branch with all its might, shaking the holy tree, and Caesar's left wing was cut right off the Cicada wasp. The wing slowly fell from the sky, like the dead leaves fell from the holy tree every 12 seasons. I missed. Dan, whose strength quickly faded as the weight of the sword and tiredness hit him, said in a sad, disappointing voice. If only Dan had swung a bit more to the left, his revenge would be fulfilled. But due to having only his left eye to work with, it was quite difficult to aim straight, especially with something as big and heavy as the crow cutter. Dan fell to his knees, letting go of the heavy sword, defeated. Caesar started falling off the branch, as he could no longer fly with a missing wing. But
Despite the pain and the shock of losing a wing, he managed to use his remaining wing to redirect where his body would fall. So, instead of falling completely off the branch, he managed to catch the branch with his top and middle legs. He threw himself upwards, landing on top of Dan, pinning the defeated dung beetle to the ground. Dan was silent. He didn't resist. He accepted his fate. Dan! Caesar wanted to say something. He didn't know what, but he wanted to say something to the bug he once called brother. He still felt something weird when he looked at Dan. This uncomfortable feeling. Will it be gone once Dan is gone? He only had one way to find out. So Caesar stung Dan in his stomach, slowly injecting his deadly venom. It will all be over soon, Caesar thought to himself. Dan did something Caesar would remember for all eternity. With his top left leg, Dan slowly and gently touched Caesar's face. Dan's eye was looking at Caesar's eyes when Dan whispered his last words. In a slow, sad, tired tone, the crippled knight let out a single word. Brother. Dan started coughing up blood. The blood was orange. The venom was already too deep inside his body. And in the next 15 seconds, Dan's soul slowly left his body, as the dung beetle choked on his own infected blood. And so, Dan the mighty passed away, and there was only one knight left. The cunning knight was uncontrollably shaking, even minutes after Dan's death. This has never happened before. He had killed dozens, yet he was never shaking after any of his kills. Caesar felt something on his face, something wet and uncomfortable. He put his shaky legs near his face and saw something dripping from it. He felt the same thing near his eyes. Were these tears? Was he crying? What about that sharp pain? There was a sharp pain he felt deep inside his stomach. Through tears, he checked his body for wounds, but it was of no use. He couldn't find any. What was this mysterious pain? Was it tiredness? Or perhaps shock or regret? Caesar did not know. He only knew that he had to get away from there as soon as possible, because for some reason the pain grew stronger the more he stayed near Dan's body. But he couldn't fly anymore, not with a single wing. So Caesar, with a weak, shaky voice, called out for the guards that were nearby. What happened to the Lord? The guards wondered as they slowly carried their lord back inside the nest.